Battle of Vikings, Season 2, Episode 1. The war horns sound, a deep and echoing call across the valley. The air is thick with anticipation as two armies stand motionless, eyeing each other like predators waiting to strike. The morning mist clings to their armor, their breaths visible in the cold air. The tension is suffocating. Every warrior knows that within moments, steel will meet steel, and only the strongest will survive. Then, with a mighty roar, Ragnar raises his sword high above his head. His warriors respond with a deafening war cry. Shields tighten in their grip, and swords glisten under the dim sky. The earth trembles beneath the weight of the charging army. Footsteps pound against the soil as the Vikings storm forward, their battle cries slicing through the air like thunder. And then, impact. The armies collide in an explosion of fury. Metal clashes against metal, shields splinter, and the screams of the wounded fill the battlefield. Blood sprays across the cold ground as axes carve through flesh and bone. Spears are thrust with deadly precision, piercing armor and felling warriors in an instant. The battlefield erupts into chaos. The sound of swords clashing rings through the air, mixed with the roars of warriors fighting for their lives. The ground becomes slick with mud and blood, turning every step into a struggle. Shields are battered and broken, weapons lost and replaced with whatever can be grasped in the heat of battle. The Vikings fight with unrelenting ferocity, refusing to give an inch. Rollo swings his massive axe, cutting through enemies with sheer brute force. His strikes are devastating, one blow, one kill. Every muscle in his body strains with power as he fights like a beast unleashed. His enemies try to surround him, but he turns, striking down another man, then another. Ragnar fights with lethal precision, his eyes locked on every threat. He dodges a sword swing, countering with a vicious thrust. Another attacker rushes in. Ragnar sidesteps and cuts him down with a single, fluid motion. He fights not with brute strength, but with unmatched skill. His enemies fall, one after another. A war horn cuts through the chaos. In the heart of battle, Ragnar himself fights with deadly grace. He moves like a predator, focused, fearless, relentless. His sword carves through his enemies, each strike followed by raw determination. His eyes scan the battlefield, always searching, always aware. Then he spots them, Jarl Borg's men. Ragnar narrows his eyes. These are not mere warriors, they are trained killers. He tightens his grip on his sword. One of them charges, Ragnar dodges, countering with a swift strike that sends his opponent crashing to the ground. Another enemy lunges at him. Ragnar steps aside, grabbing the man's arm and driving his blade deep into his chest. The warrior gasps, then collapses. The tide of battle begins to shift in the Vikings' favor. Their enemies falter, stepping back, regrouping. But just as victory seems near, the sound of distant war horns echoes once more. Reinforcements. More enemy soldiers pour into the battlefield. The Vikings' momentum is halted, their advance pushed back. The battle is far from over. A new wave of warriors crashes into them. The fight becomes more brutal, more desperate. Every swing of the sword is met with another, every block followed by a counterattack. The Vikings refuse to retreat, their war cries growing louder, more defiant. Ragnar knows they cannot afford to lose ground. He calls out to his warriors, rallying them with his voice. They respond with renewed vigor, fighting with even greater ferocity. The ground is littered with the fallen, but the battle rages on. With bloodied hands and battered armor, the Vikings continue to fight. Their bodies ache, their breaths are heavy, but their spirit remains unbroken. They have come too far to fall now. The enemy presses forward, but the Vikings hold their ground. Each warrior fights not only for victory, but for honor, for their people, for their gods. Finally, as the sun begins to dip